Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is my good brother here in the temple, good brother Monarch. How are we doing today, man?
Not too bad. Nothing certain this time, so I think we're good.
Nothing certain, and nothing's tried to kill you yet.
Give it a few days, I'm sure something will come up, but for now, we are good. But yeah, for today, we're back at Cursebrand Chronicles.
Now, last time we tackled this, we tackled a bit of character creation and a bit of the corruption system. Which was a bit brief, but these last two have been brief to kind of set up what's to come. Not to mention, this isn't as massive of an RPG core book as one might think. But we are once again having to do 2 chapters at the same time. Character classes this time, and then character details.
Details is like 4 pages, though.
Yeah. If there's anything we take away from early on is that this is a game meant for dice goblins. because
Yes.
some games will have it that as you develop, you get more static bonuses, your plus ones, your plus twos, all that kind of stuff. This just says you're not getting those for the most part. You are getting more dice though.
Yay.
Uh, I know that there's some Shadowrun player off in the distance going, "Get on my level." I'm like, "You don't count for this. Just stay over there with your 16 pounds of d6s, because we all know you've got them." Look, anyone who tells you that they've got enough dice is a fucking liar.
But yes, I do also want to point out for anyone who didn't see the last couple, one other takeaway: the curse brand you're using in this game, the more powerful you make them, the more risk and penalty you're also taking on. And as this game is Cursebrand Chronicles, this is going to be core to every character you make, is how much you want that power compared to the risk.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be interested to see if that theme carries on beyond just the curse brands, but it's going to be there no matter what you do in this game.
Especially since um the I know I made analogies to the curses and to vampire clans. It still isn't a one-to-one perfect analogy, but the point is that each of the curses has a particular theme that they build around, much in the same way that a vampire clan has certain powers and certain playstyles that it is going to lean towards. Uh, I know some might say, because of how much of an Exalted fan that I am, why didn't I use the Exalted casts for solars, lunars, and the like? That's because the you do get one cool thing depending on your cast, but that's just one thing, not a whole tree of them. And yeah, there's the way the charm trees work against different exalt types, but it just doesn't fit here. Uh, it's the same reason I didn't use the unique feature that roles get in, say, Cyberpunk. I mean, it certainly is a unique thing, and it certainly has its skewings, but it's one thing, not a collection of things. Now, that being said, we did get a bit of a taste of something that's going to be a bigger factor going forward, and that is the tree-based talent system. Now, anybody who's played any ARPG or MMO of any kind of substance in the last 30 years will be very familiar with this concept. You level up, you get points to spend in a given tree. Um, one could One could say this was popularized with Diablo or with some other games, but everybody knows this kind of setup. And when I did interview Kane about this, he did remark that this is something that people who have a more of a video game background have a easier time grasping, which only further demonstrates a issue that I've had for the longest time when it comes to the TTRPG scene, and that is the culture of conformity. Uh, this idea of of having to do things a certain way. We've talked about this on many occasions on the podcast, the whole design by gospel thing, and yes, inevitably one of these days I'm going to have to make a short video explaining design by gospel in a bite-sized package. That's not to say I'm going to make it a YouTube short, God no. And I'm not making a TikTok about it because I don't have a TikTok account. I barely, the only time I look up anything on TikTok is when links are sent to me. I'm sure some people will find it a fine platform. I just have no interest.
Right there with you. There's
But
the occasional gem I've seen crop up and sent to me, but I don't go looking for it.
Well, you're familiar with Sturgeon's Law, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I find that it applies here. So, first off, we do have classes. In fact, that's what we're going to be covering for the majority of this. The crew seemed haphazard at first glance. The leader a hulking mechanetic, more machine than man. I'm not doing an Alec Guinness impression. The talker an elegant woman laden with lens. Remember, folks, lens with a Z. Flanking them, a cowled man teeming with blades and a woman sporting the bomber jacket of an elite pilot. While they seem to have nothing in common, it is this that identifies them as mercenaries, adventurers working together to complement each other's skills. But it was the marks of black across the woman's brow that signaled that they were curse-branded. A crew like this had darkness in them, but they also had nothing to fear from the miasma, which meant they could go where needed. Although there was a bit of a typo on the where, it's spelled as were. Just a minor thing I gotta point out. So then we have understanding classes, which is mostly going to cover the types of classes and go a bit beyond that. Though a, a bit of the types thing isn't going to be too relevant here, at least not yet. But I'll leave understanding classes to you.
So your class will provide you with one or more elite skill trees, talents, and bonuses to your traits. Characters can select from a huge variety of classes, which are broken into these three categories. Vocational character classes. These are learned skills and abilities that arise from long hours of training and dedication. Even simple vocations, like being an expert blacksmith, qualify. The more powerful the abilities learned from the vocation, the higher the vocation's entry requirements will be. Then we get ancestral character classes. Ancestries are classes that are inherited and genetic. One cannot learn to be a dragon or a mutant. But simply being born as one does not mean you will learn to master your innate ability. Ancestries are classes that take advantage of and maximize the innate abilities of arcane and eldritch creatures or mutations of mortal creatures. Then we get augmented character classes. They are neither inherent nor learned, but somewhere between the two, augmentations fundamentally change a character, but it requires time and dedication to master these newly added abilities. You must learn to make the best of what has been done to you, whether you are cybernetically rebuilt or cursed to house an ancient evil. All classes share the same characteristics, however, outlined below. And you got requirements. Many classes have stipulations. We'll get into those on each individual class. Talents. These are talents you automatically gain upon entry as a first-level character. These might increase traits or provide some other essential ability for you to perform the skills of the class. Class skills. All classes offer some number of skill points for first-level characters and an elite skill tree that you can upgrade with skill points. You do not automatically acquire these abilities beyond basic knowledge of the skill tree. In some cases, in some cases, this basic skill tree allows you to make an action roll under that elite skill, as is often the case with extra, ordinary, or magical abilities, but only if that is explicitly called out. All classes feature a complement of starting equipment, weapons, armor, and currency.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, I do like little touches but only if it is explicitly called out, to kind of just clear up any potential confusion people might have about how things are worded later. Just little bits of clarifying language I've seen in this so far have been nice.
Mm-hmm.
Then we'll move into class summary. So the classes that we have in the core edition: the Crystallogist, Fiendbane, Gunglaive, Lens Mage, Martialist, Mechanic Ranger. Had to reread that one real quick. And Scoundrel.
Mm-hmm. And we do. Each one has a sentence worth of description. And
I figured we'd probably get into that once we started talking the individual classes.
Yeah.
Since we'll be doing that anyway.
And the first one is the Crystallogist, which each of them, it goes into a bit of abilities, outlook, background. A lot of that, of course, is on the fluff end of things, but I'll mainly read off the first couple of paragraphs before we get into the crunchy end of things. The very land seemed to hum as the weathered hand raised against the billowing sand. A bright stone glowed beneath the shaman's robes, and then, impossibly, the turquoise fire spread out around the party, forming a shimmering wall of iridescent energy. As the sands and winds blast against the wall of energy, the party looks on in wonder. This is no lens magic. This is the will of the stone. Only the most ancient Hassian tribes still teach the old ways, the whispering stones and witch-light fire. The Crystallogist who masters this ancient tradition learned to store power in Dithesite, channel that energy into magic-like effects, and empower Lens by combining it with Dithesite. The most venerable shamans insist this is simply the first step to an even greater power, one that can change the heavens and open the gates to the afterlife, but this is superstitious nonsense.
I would just like to point out right now, so far as far as the magical end of things, we've only really heard about Lens. And the first magical thing we're starting to look at, it goes, by the way, this one is not Lens.
Mm-hmm.
I am mildly bothered by this. It is not an actual problem with the book.
Yeah.
But it annoys me.
Now, as far as the requirements, to achieve this class, you must have a well of soul and a strong sense of self. An empathy and soul score of 15 are required to become a Crystallogist. If your scores are insufficient at first level, increase them to 15. So we're doing ability minimums like we're back in AD&D. Although I don't mind the setup here for the simple reason that what it says right at the start, because let's keep in mind your ability scores are rolled randomly. We already covered that last time.
Yeah.
And here it's a case of if you've got something where you're just a little bit short, or you really want to do this particular class, then you can bump it up. You're not going to be as good as somebody who rolled over 15 when it comes to those, but you can still do it. Which I prefer that instead of you've got to roll your abilities first and then you have to pick your particular class. This is back in the day. There was a mindset of you build your idea after you've built up your stats. Whereas a lot of games that have come out in the years since, from those early waves, have built on the idea of you come up with an idea and then you build your character stats around that idea.
Yeah.
Neither one of these approaches is better or worse than the others, but they both have their advantages and disadvantages, since they're essentially just two different schools of thought.
Yeah, in the case of how it's working here with giving you the minimum at least, on one hand you could say, oh, maybe people are just going to use this to maximize stats, some shit, but you're not going to, as you said, you're not going to be as good. I don't see any way someone's going to be able to just come in and blatantly break this system without even trying. I like how it's set up here. If
they end up rolling a bunch of 8s at character creation, then I'm going to have some very curious questions.
But I'm just saying the automatic increase rather than just barring them, it works fine with how it's set up here. So I'm all right with this.
Mm-hmm. So next we have the class talents, and while the class skills we're not going to get into because there's quite a few of them. And the class talents we can go into, and these are the things that you're going to get right out of the gate. Mana channeling, you can, which allows you to use mana. Uh, and Dithesite crystals are essentially stored mana. They're the equivalent of mana stones in Sword World, or just any MP container. Uh, Meditation, you can recover your mana at an accelerated rate. During a break, you may open yourself to the world's energies, rolling your soul bonus dice and recovering that amount of mana. You may only gain the benefits of a meditation once per day. Then we have Surging Soul. You've trained yourself to store and release massive amounts of mana, increasing your starting mana amount by 2d6 times 10 plus 10. Each level of experience that you have with this ability, add 2d6 points of mana to your total. So let me load up any dice. So I want, because let's see what the range is going to be for that. So let's see, 2d6 times 10. Wait, I should put it as a star.
Yeah. I mean, I know your average roll should be 80.
Alright, let me just do 2d6 times 10 first. Your average roll would be 70.
Remember, with dice, you're not dealing with the 0. So it's not 3 for your average on a d6, it's 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird how statistics end up working out once you drop a 0 out of the equation.
So I'm looking at the full thing, and the highest percentage result that you have would be 80 at 16.6 repeating percent. And it says if you given what's said, what I am not sure is if every level of experience that you have this ability gain 2d6 points of mana. Is it a case where you'd add 2 to the d6 that you'd actually no, you just add 2d6. Never mind,
Yeah.
I misread it. I was thinking
Yeah.
that if you had another level of experience, then it'd be calculated as 46 times 10 plus 10. But then you'd have to redo your starting mana every
Well,
time
you could just do
level up.
2d6 times 10 and add that. But
No.
yeah. But yeah, it's just plus 2d6 to your mana total.
Yeah. And lastly, Witchfire Cowl. The very first manifestation of the Witchfire is as iridescent aura of ghostly flame that protects you from mana fountains and etheric energy. Using a small-sized or larger Dithesite, you can channel energy through the Dithesite to create a protective aura. This cowl grants you armor rank 6 and 12 durability against etheric damage per point of mana consumed to create the aura. The maximum amount of mana that you can spend on this aura is equal to the maximum charge of the Dithesite stone you are using. For example, channeling a small, flawless stone, you could spend up to 15 mana. You cannot consume mana inside the stone to activate this ability. Your Witchfire Cowl will last for 1 minute per level of experience. And of course we have class skills. A Crystologist begins with 11 skill points, and then we have the class tree. Though the way these are set up gives me the impression that it's possible for a game that uses the Prometheum system to have multiple class trees. The one that we have here is Christology, a mixture of traditional Hassian mysticism and modern, if esoteric, lens arts. Christology teaches you many of the secrets of lens, but its focus is on manipulating the energy stored in Dithesite, and in fact, the energy of the world. You'll learn advanced lens arts, as well as the ability to directly manipulate mana through Dithesite. And so we have three paths of abilities along 5 ranks.
Now, off the top of my head, I don't recall how the cost of skill points going into ranks work, but I don't know if we've actually covered that or not.
I don't think we did yet.
Yeah.
Let me do a double check just to make
Yeah.
sure I'm not talking out of my ass.
Yeah, because this is clearly not 1 point per thing. Because otherwise, I think you could theoretically get almost the entirety of the tree at first level. That is clearly not.
No, we didn't. That's going to be
Yeah.
in skill points on skills and talents. We're not there
Yeah.
yet.
Okay.
That might be for next week.
Yes.
But there's quite a few features. Some of them are, of course, stacking. And some of them are just going to be straight a bit more straightforward, like action up. You gain 1 additional action. Or empathy up. Increase your empathy ability score by 1d12. Or soul up. Increase your soul ability score by 1d20. Although when it comes to those kind of things, it would really suck if somebody spent a bunch of skill points on, say, soul up and they end up getting a natural 1. So,
I mean, that's the price you're paying with this system. No modifiers, all just straight rolls on the dice.
remember, folks, the
It
dice
would
gods
suck,
hate
yes.
you and want you to suffer. Let's see, then we have equipments. Weapon is a light melee weapon of your choice, and a fighting staff topped with a medium-sized clear Dithesite crystal. Armor is light hunter armor. Clothing is wilderness clothes, under armor clothing, walking boots, long coat or cloak. Standard equipment is a backpack, a canvas tent, a sleeping bag, 3 small cloudy Dithesite crystals, meditation aid, 2 days worth of rations, and 2 medium canteens. And you start with 2d6 times 1,000 guilders. So the Christologist, I'd say, is for those who like to be casties. This is just giving you more casty.
Yeah, so next up then, we have the Fiendbane. Mana had transformed the Great Basuk from a docile pack animal to a monstrous greater fiend. Again, the huge, barbed tail came crashing down before it. The beast had scattered the party, all save the lone figure dressed set in tactical gear, who unslings a great sword as tall as himself. Deftly, he rolls under Beast's line of sight before delivering a terrible blow to the monster's forelimb, crippling it. Deftly, he leaps back, preparing his blade for the beast's rush. He is unafraid. He was trained for this. The Fiendbane is an expert soldier, trained and honed to kill fiends in an age of guns and tanks and bombs. As the special anti-fiend forces, they specialize in the use of large melee weapons, as they are exceptionally effective against fiends, whereas firearms are not, and casters are unreliable. I will add, I do like how they're writing these intros for these classes. It adds a good bit of flavor to both them and establishing a bit about the world. It's much nicer than just a boring description of the class. So we'll go on to the requirements. Becoming a Fiendbane requires a strong body and an iron memory. A strength and memory score of 15 are required to take this class. If not high enough, increase. That's going to likely be the same for every class. The Fiendbane Combat School, Raid, rests on heavy weapons extensively. You must purchase either a +1 skill bonus in Great Blades or crushing weapons with one of your initial skill points. Class talents include Raid School. You have been trained in the elite anti-fiend martial art, Raid. Select 4 techniques from this school or basic techniques. You can learn additional techniques at any time. Anti-fiend assault training. Your training is strengthen your body, gain 2d4 times 10 plus 10 durability. Soldier's Vigor. Your inhuman endurance grants you 1d4 times 10 plus 10 vigor. And then for your skills, you start with 12 skill points. And the Anti-Fiend Assault Training. See, long before the war and the miasma, humanity was forced to live in fortified cities by the occurrence of magically mutated creatures, fiends. You have been trained as elite military fiend hunter. You can develop superior great weapon skills and Oh, yeah, just a quick summary of what the skills actually entail.
Mm-hmm.
As the other, we got 3 different trees you can go down, ranks 1 through 5.
Mm-hmm. And
I am going to say quickly, this seems to be a recurring theme. I glanced at another. Like that top tree includes like a head weapon mastery +1, and then a +2, and then eventually a +3.
Mm-hmm.
This seems to be a theme amongst all the classes where that top tree is just kind of a 3 out of 5 or a +1 to a very specific thing.
I would say those who have a preference for the for the fighter are in other games would naturally gravitate to the Fiendbane.
Very specifically, this seems like it's going to be your melee guy.
Yeah. However, if you're expecting the fighter to be the basic attack guy like in some more litigious role-playing games, that is not going to be the case here. Especially since techniques are its own thing, and if you're thinking that it's going to be like maneuvers in some games, you're not far off. But then we have the Gunglaive, which every time I see that, my mind keeps thinking Gungrave. So I'll take this one. A lone figure stands between his realm and the hulking mutated beast. The creature lashes out with its barbed tail. With lightning speed, the figure pirouettes, the blow glancing off his weapon. Not a gun, not a sword, a lens glowing in the chamber, as he uses the momentum to rush in and attack. As his blade cuts deep, magical energy swells inside the lens, and a bolt of fire rips through the beast's hide. This is a Gunglaive. Swordsmen and gunslingers, the Gunglaive exists in the realm of contradiction. Fighters who specialize in duality, they master martial arts, gunplay, and magic alike. Their eponymous weapons are the same, neither a caster nor a sword, but something of both. It is this form of duality they find strength. It is from this duality they find strength. I don't know why I misread that. Not limited to close quarters combat or ranged engagement, the Gunglaive is a force of shock and awe on the battlefield. So those who want your gunblade-ish gish, these are the guys. and the representative they have is somebody who's using what looks like a rifle with an oversized bayonet. But I have a feeling that the gunglaive is meant to be legally distinct gunblade.
Well, this one actually shoots bullets, so.
Mm-hmm. So it isn't as hardcore on the blade part as, say, the gunbreaker design that I went with for FF Legend. But the DNA is definitely there. So then we have requirements. Mastering the gunglaive is challenging, and many who try fail. An agility and soul score of 15 is required to take this class. If your ability scores are not high enough, increase your ability scores to 15 when you enter this as your first class. So then we have the class talents. Glaive School. You're trained in the advanced combat techniques of the Glaive School. You develop 2 Glaive School techniques at once. Once this choice is made, it cannot be changed. You can learn additional techniques at any time. Gunner's Resilience. Your combat training gains you a bonus of 1d6 times 10 plus 10 to durability. Gunner's Energy. You gain a bonus of 5d6 plus 10 mana. Every new level of experience increases your mana by 1d4 plus 1. Gunner's Vigor. You increase your initial vigor by 1d4 times 10 plus 10. Each new level of experience increases your total vigor by 2d4. And Gunglaive Combat. While you are wielding a gunglaive, you have 1 additional action per turn, which must be a gunglaive attack or technique. They start with 10 skill points, which, given their features, I can understand why they'd take a hit to that. And we have their tree, which is referred to as Gun Kata. The gunglaive trains exclusively to master the dual nature of their weapon. You will unlock unique techniques that utilize the gunglaive to its fullest. Learn to attack with it as a singular weapon, and make use of its caster-like properties. So then, and we have the same tree set. They have the same tree setup, but also there's one special entry in this known as Awakened Glaive, which you can get at rank 1. Once you unlock this ability, you may form a bond with a specific gunglaive, awakening the lens inside. Awakening a gunglaive takes 8 hours of concentration, meditation, and work. At the end of this time, the gunglaive becomes junctioned with you, occupying one of your lens slots, and permanently consumes 8 mana. Once a gunglaive is awakened, you can continue to permanently spend mana to increase the lens level of the caster within. Your awakened gunglaives and damage dice increases with each level added. So, first level is just Awoken, requires 8 mana. Minimum level is first level. Spell Blast damage is 3 dice. Then at level 2, it requires 16 mana. You have to be 5th level and get an extra die. Level 3 requires 24 mana. Minimum level is 10. In fact, it's pretty much a rule of 5 all the way up to 20th. Blast damage is 5 dice. Level 4 requires 32 mana. Minimum level is 15th, and blast damage is 10 dice. And 5th level requires 40 mana. You have to be 20th level, and the blast damage is 30 dice.
You can bet I am rolling all 30 of those dice every time.
And as far as weapons go, you start with a long or great gunglaive with 50 rounds of Dithicite ammunition, light service armor, city clothes, under armor clothing, boots or hiking shoes, duster or jacket. Standard equipment is a backpack, canvas tent, sleeping bag, gunglaive harness, gunglaive maintenance kit, 3 days worth of rations, and 2 large canteens. And you start with 2d8 times 1,000 guilders. So then we get to Lens Mage.
Finally we learn what this lens magic stuff is.
Well, a little bit.
Enough. So, shadows dance from the light the orbs around her head cast. 7 in total. each capable of unleashing devastation. As she prepares her mind, she reaches out to the brightest red orb. Through it, she will focus her will and power, and fire will manifest. This fire will burn anything that stands before her, such as the crowd of shambling horrors. The crowd of shambling horrors that were birthed by the miasma that passes her recently. With a silent gesture, fire erupts from her hand, and the walked dead burn. The undisputed master of lens arts, the lens mage will learn to unlock the mystery of lens and unleash powerful magics from the arcane stones. In time, some learn to forge lens at reduced cost, or simply excel at magical manipulation. The most powerful abilities of the lens mage are refractions that allow them to alter the nature of a lens spell as it is cast. Alright, so basically casting arcane magics through stones.
Mm-hmm.
So our requirements are reason and soul at 15. And for our talents, only 2 talents on this one. So constantly training to expand your mana reserves is the talent. Constantly training to expand your spirit has significantly increased your mana reserves by 3d4 times 10 plus 20. Each new level of experience adds 3d6 mana. That might explain why the class's talents are a little lighter on this one. And then you can for meditation, you can recover your mana at an accelerated rate. During a break, you may open yourself to the world's energies, rolling your soul bonus dice and recovering that amount of mana. You may only gain the benefits of meditation once per day. They get 13 skill points and lens mastery for their talent tree.
Mm-hmm.
The dedicated study of lens arts, and particular applications of magic. You'll unlock the ability to junction many lenses, empower them further, and manipulate the magics you unleash.
And we'll be able. I think we should come back to to this class once we have a better understanding of how lens works.
Yeah.
For this series, because it's in contrast. Oh. In contrasting this with the first caster that we saw, this one is more of for those who want to use just all the lenses that they can get, as well as the fact that it seems to be more blaster caster.
Yeah, because both talents involve let's get as much mana as we can to just blast and pump this out.
Well, one of the bigger talents is minor and major refractions. Every time you get it, you can pick two from that list. But you can pick 2 from the list for minor and one in the case of major. And each of them is basically doing some sort of meta magic.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, it's not each of them will give some extra effect, but you're spending more mana on that refraction.
Now, so what I'm gathering from this so far, lens isn't limited to your lens mage. What your lens mage does is take those lenses, alters them in ways other people can't, and gets a ridiculous mana pool so they can keep blasting it off in ways that other people can't.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than just limiting lens to the class.
Yep. The weapons they get, weapons as part of equipment, a light melee weapon or your choice of a 25 service revolver or a 25 submachine pistol and 60 rounds of ammunition, In addition, you start with an ordinary rank 1 Aegis and a rank 1 fire, ice, or lightning lens of your choice. If it
Always
sounds
lightning.
if it sounds like lenses are materia, you're not far off. I'll put it that way. Armor, armored coat, clothing, city clothes, Under Armour clothing, riding boots, long coat, or cloak. Standard equipment, backpack, canvas tent, sleeping bag, 2 3-slot lens harnesses, meditation aid, 2 days worth of rations, and 2 medium canteens. You start with 2d8 times 1,000 guilders. And then we get to the Martialist, which
I will
I feel
say
called
before
out.
you read that description, that quote at the bottom of that description, I think that sums it up more than the 2 paragraphs prior to it. But yes.
What? In our arts, thought is action, so concentrate for both our sake.
Strength is peace. It's just a 3-letter. I picked every wrong word there. It is a 3-word quote. It's like, yeah, I think that summed it up right there.
So, let's see. When the rest of the team packs in their gear for the night and the sun falls below the horizon, off to the side, a woman sits, legs folded, palms together. On her shoulders and her head rest weight stones pulled from the earth around her. She'll remain still like this for hours into the night, balancing rocks. The stillness breaking only for an instant as a fist flies forward, causing dust and sand to kick up from the tremendous force. For the Martialist, there is only training, and training is the only way. Specialist in unarmed combat and martial arts, the Martialist is a lethal combatant and student of the ancient Hassian combat school known as the Tree of Might. DBZ fans, sit down. Through training and meditation, these warriors learn to transform their bodies into supernatural weapons. Their unarmed strikes, typo once again, can be more devastating than a cannon, and their strengthened bodies and geez, typos for days here, withstand incredible damage. So, yeah, monks. And when it comes to the class talents, first is School of Might. You are a trained, unarmed combatant and martial artists. Typo once again. You begin with 4 School of Might or basic techniques of choice. You may learn or develop additional techniques at any time. Then we have the Seed of Power. As a martialist, you have trained and expanded your mana through forceful and challenging training. Increase your internal mana reserve by 1d4 times 10 plus 10. Let's see, then Searing Fists. When you take a chance to increase the damage of your unarmed attacks, you deal an additional 1d6 aetheric damage for each chance you take at the cost of 10 mana. You may use this ability once per round on your turn. And the Wind is Endless. You gain a Vigor bonus of 1d6 times 10 plus 10. And the Mountain's Roots. The harshest training has increased your durability by 2d6 times 10 plus 30.
I believe that is the biggest plus we've seen on any of these abilities. So far, I think we've only had plus 10, or I think there is the one plus 20.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, after that, it's just 10 skill points. One of them does have to go into unarmed, I believe. Or hand-to-hand. Nothing all that different about the skill tree as compared to anybody else. So,
Mm-hmm.
equipment, either Teuton for a staff, ancient light armor, martial arts training uniform, street clothes, boots, simple cloak, and thick leather gloves. They're really committing to the no weapons and stuff here. Yeah, bedroll, simple canvas tent, hiking stick, 2 days rations, 2 water skins, 2d4 times 100 guilders.
Mm-hmm.
So for our next class, we have the Mechanetic Ranger. The team is surrounded by mercenaries, guns trained. Things look bleak until a faint whirring sound indicates the presence of a newcomer. In the blink of an eye, a shadow flashes by. A mercenary falls, then another. With a gurgle, the last discovers the blade blooming from his chest. As he falls, their assailant is revealed. A lithe mechanical form. 1 part assassin, 1 part scout. This is the Mechanetic Ranger. The Mechanetic Ranger is a major reconstruction mechanetic. I don't know why I have difficulty saying the word mechanetic. Someone who has had more than half their body replaced with manatech prosthetics. These augmented warriors specialize in speed and agility, their limbs and spines allowing them to move with unparalleled grace and agility. So for our class talents, requirements are stamina and resolve 15. For our talents, mechanetic tolerance. Either by will or by nature, you are more resistant to the costly effects of mechanetic augmentation. The vigor cost of your current and future mechanetic prosthetics implants is reduced by 2 to a minimum 1. And mechanetic grace. Your mechanical limbs can ease your movement when acting defensively. The vigor cost for you to dodge is reduced by 2 to a minimum of 1. Again, we're continuing the theme. Your prosthetics are not limited to this class. They can just utilize them better. The class skills is 13 points in mechanetic synergy for the tree. The Mechanetic Ranger develops an enhanced level of balance with their mechanical halves. After all, they are a balance of man and manatech. The will and might of the spirit and the grace and precision of the machine.
Of these, yeah, I think you meant to say sprite, not spirit.
Oh, sprite, yeah. Mine of the sprite.
The vibe I keep getting is Street Sam or Solo.
Yeah.
So the let's see. And yeah, the as far as the equipment, we have mechanetic reconstruction, medium mechanetic arms and legs with a strength of 25 and a speed of 25, mechanetic spine, fortified skeleton, 1 external lens mount on each arm, and 2 internal weapons of choice, 1 in each arm. You start with a handgun and rifle of choice, as well as 150 rounds of ammunition for both. Light tactical armor, street clothes, Under Armour clothing, boots, rain-resistant cloak, and boots.
I don't know why that's so funny. Boots is on there twice.
Yep. Standard equipment, backpack, canvas tent, bedroll, mechanetic repair kit, 2 days of rations and a large canteen, and you start with 2d4 times 1,000 guilders. But yeah, the vibe I keep getting with the Mechanetic Ranger is the Street Samurai or the Solo. I know because some people see ranger, they might think that these are stealthy boys or ambush boys, like rangers. That's not the vibe I get from them. If
I
anything,
mean, they are very stealthy, or at
oh,
least they can be based off what we read, and ambushy.
I mean they can be, but I'd say it's more about the fact that they can push their body to do more than normal.
Yeah.
So in that regard, if I were to compare them to an archetype and say Shadowrun, probably adepts. If you're not familiar, adepts are mages who turn their magic abilities inward to let them do extra normal feats. See, so then we have Scoundrel. The bandit adjusted his rifle, growing increasingly unsure. After all, the stranger seemed to know all about the job and the boss's orders, right? How else would he know the ins and outs unless he was sent by the big man? With a wry grin and a swagger, the stranger gently pushed the rifle down. That kind of confidence comes once again, typos, from knowing you're in charge of the bandit thought. Yeah, this guy was legit. Ramblers, gamblers, thieves, and conmen, the scoundrel makes their way by wits, charm, and ingenuity. They learn to read people, improvise equipment, and fight with whatever is on hand. Some become something of a modern rogue, seeking adventure for adventure's sake. Others become dastardly villains interested only in their profit or gain. Let's see, and in order to take Scoundrel, you need to have speed, reason, and empathy at 15. Yep, we found our skill monkey. One that
I think this might be the only one that had 3 stats at 15 or higher.
that's borderline giving me mad flashbacks.
I don't know if that's going to be too much of an issue here, because again, this does have that minimum ceiling, so it'll just bump them up.
Mm-hmm.
So I suspect that's not going to be much of an issue in this case. Let's see, what are our talents? And we've got untapped potential.
Mm-hmm.
You have greatness in you. When you develop a talent from a class, skill tree, or open talent that would increase your durability, vigor, or mana, you charge the dice you roll by 1 rank, including from this class's elite skill tree. I am immediately no longer bothered by the mad vibes at all now, because it seems to kind of inherently help you make up for that. Untrained combatant. You have a knack for winning a fight by any means necessary. You begin with 3 techniques from the dead man's virtue school or basic techniques. So it's also vibing with more of a dirty fighter. And you get 13 skill points. And Tinker, Soldier, Sir for the skill tree. The scoundrel learns to apply and mix skills and abilities to improvise and improve, and above all, to do it with some swagger. You'll develop the ability to fake it until you make it with many skills, read people, and make use of your environment to fight and survive. Equipment, we've got light melee weapon and handgun of your choice with 120 rounds of ammunition. In addition, if you have lens arts, you start with a rank 1 aid or restore lens, your choice. Armored coat, nice outfit, city clothes, Under Armour clothing, riding boots, long coat or cloak. Go bag, small multi-tool kit, survival knife, backpack, first aid, tent, sleeping bag, 5 days of rations, and 2 medium canteens, and 3d6 times 1,000 guilders.
Mm-hmm. That covers the classes, and I'd say the scoundrel is not necessarily the skill monkey as we thought, though it definitely leans into that,
Yeah.
especially with its particular skills.
I think, like, I wouldn't call anyone in this a skill monkey, but they give the scoundrel a bit of a lean towards that.
They're more of a jack of many trades.
Yeah.
Is the vibe that I get here. With a little bit of a leaning towards diplomancer. But keep in mind keep in mind when it comes to the skill points, it's not like you're spending them all on just class skills. There's other avenues to consider as well. So then we have character details, and the opening part of it is covering things like name, appearance, gender. Then we have temperament, which was kind of hinted at early on. Your temperament describes the dueling nature of your personality. Do you follow your head or your heart, and to what degree? Temperament is a tool to help you understand how your character thinks. Are you a fiery zealot that always listens to your heart? Reason be damned, or are you more contemplative and methodical, only letting your feelings intrude on your logic when it suits you? The following are brief outlines of the 8 temperaments. None of these are rigid rules set in stone, and no one is perfectly exemplative of these general characterizations. Creatures with only limited intellect should still behave in a manner that is rational and calculating, whereas a brilliant character could be completely ruled by their emotions. Now, the temperaments are methodical, analytical, reasonable, passive, zen, passionate, impulsive, zealous, instinctual, and mindless. And I'd say temperament is the closest thing to alignment in more litigious games.
That said, I've not seen anything that says this is going to have a mechanical benefit or effect at all. It's possible this is just going to be here just to help players kind of get an idea of how they want to play the character.
Mm-hmm.
We might see something more about that later, but I'm not getting that sense. Yep, so far I've liked what we've read on classes. As I mentioned, it's more about giving like a guide to your character, because nothing we've seen is strictly limited to any individual class. Everyone's got access to the lenses from the looks of it. Virtually every skill tree you're going to have access to, except for the class-specific ones, but the class-specific ones are more like just enhancing things that exist for every other class. Like everyone can get the lens, make use of those. Lens Mage just lets you focus more on that.
Mm-hmm.
etc., down the list.
Which honestly is the approach that I prefer.
Yeah, that's basically all my thoughts on the classes so far.
Yeah. But and obviously because of the tree design that is present, you are going to have a case where there's quite a variety of ways that somebody can tackle the classes. And the way the scoundrel was set up, it sounds like there is the opportunity for multi-classing if somebody wanted to take it. Although I could easily see that not being all that necessary, because keep in mind the class features are just one avenue. There's multiple avenues on this.
Also, I'm assuming in some of these other trees, you're also going to have ability score jumps. I rolled down, and the answer is yes. So even if there's not multi-classing, that scoundrel's ability is still going to come up quite a bit.
Mm.
Just at a glance through these, what we'll be looking at tomorrow or next week.
Yep. And that's the character details thing is basically the bringing it to life kind of segment in character creation, which is why I was so skimmy on it, because there's not a whole lot of crunch to it. The big thing is temperament, and I actually prefer this approach. Because the reason I pick on alignment so much is that alignment ends up creating a bunch of moral quandaries that it's not prepared to answer. Um, like things like the baby orc question or the paladin problem.
To be fair, the Paladin's Lord has a very strict set of guidelines depending on edition. That I think is the more of the issue with the Paladin as opposed to the alignment itself.
It's the if you don't it's
But,
the
yeah.
if you do something that is considered not as considered against the code, and the code is so damn vague, you end up you end up running the risk of losing your paladin problems, which ends up instead of encouraging people to play to the strengths, it encourages them to be dickish.
Alignment itself, I like it.
Well, there's also
I just don't hold too hard and fast to it. That's my only thing.
I'd like to say I'd be in the same boat if it weren't for the fact that there's whole rules about X characters who don't veer off a particular alignment, like the barbarian who must always be chaotic.
That's more an issue with the class design and the enlightenment setup.
Well, when it was just
it's very silly.
when it was just a case of this is how the powers that be feel about you, I'm perfectly fine with that. When it became a morality system, it was never designed for that kind of thing, and that's why you have the problem. Whereas temperament is just referring to personality, and it's more meant as essentially a story seed for players.
Yeah.
So I don't have as much of an issue with it. Now, next time around, when we continue our tackle through Cursebrand Chronicles, we'll be diving into the skill system, and one might expect that the skill system is going to be akin to the way skills are typically used. Skill description, static modifier, those are present, but there are skill trees much in the way that we had talent trees here. So that's something to keep in mind for next time. Then again, there's been and while the skill trees aren't as talent based as what you saw with the classes, the pattern is still going to be there, especially the rule of 5, and it should be worth noting. It is it very much is a case where where skill point spending is 1-to-1, but depending on your level, that's going to determine the highest rank of skills that you can learn.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind once you get to it. I do like that. I will note this in advance. I do like that the skill trees do bundle in skills that in other games would have been separated. I've had a pet peeve with some games that say have each weapon type its own separate skill, like a separate skill for swords, a separate skill for knives, and so on. I mean, if you're doing it where it's just this is your skill in light weapons, this is your skill in heavy weapons, that I'm fine with. You end up crossing the line, in my opinion, when you're going into a bunch of different specific subcategories. And don't even get me started on knowledge skills.
Yeah, like I'm kind of okay with splitting it up more if there's like actual real big differences between how each one's going to be applied in game. But I can't think of any where that's actually the case, so
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's the reason I went with the knowledge skill system the way I did for FF Legend. I'm looking forward to doing that Q&A later this month. And for the because like you've seen how many different knowledge skills some characters can have in like Pathfinder.
God. Why?
What, don't you love having 20 different knowledge subjects as their own skills?
Look, I still like Pathfinder, but I'm not going to defend the fucking knowledge skills.
Or having to spell precious skill points on use rope.
Was that still in Pathfinder? I think that was just bundled with Escape Artist, wasn't it?
Pathfinder and D&D 3.5 kind of run together in my mind, so it could have.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's one of the ones that got condensed down. Like, putting both move silently and fucking whatever the sneak one is just into stealth. Because why was that 2 skills?
Yeah. Even in just the normal skill list, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different knowledge skills.
Look, I condensed that down to 4.
Mm-hmm.
Which is much more manageable and reasonable, I think.
Yeah.
Fucking 10.
And some skill, like for instance, even with that, you got some that are going to be used maybe a handful of times depending on campaign, and some that are going to get used a lot, almost too much, especially anything involving dexterity. But the point is, the way people approach detail when it comes to skill lists is borked.
That said, we'll get into more details on how the skill setup this actually works when we make it that far in.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be interesting to see how this one works.
Yep. So and that'll be something that we'll be tackling in about a week's time. And I hope to see you all back for that when the time comes.
Well, that should be 2 weeks, because next week we got Velocity.
All right. I hope some of you are nostalgic for Air Gear and Jet Set Radio, because we're going to be calling back to that. I guarantee it. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.